with Sovereign Harmony Astrology up on the hill. Thank you for joining me this morning. It is Sunday, May 3rd. We're going to do the astrology for May 3rd through the 9th. So we are just coming off of this very intense Scorpio full moon on Friday, May 1st. That full moon squared Pluto, the modern ruler of Scorpio in Aquarius, also served as the apex point for a yod. A yod is when you have a sextile on one side, another planet on the other side, the opposite, that's forming a 150-degree angle to both of the planets in the sextile. So the sextile involved here was Saturn in Aries, Venus in Gemini, with the moon in Scorpio being the apex of that yacht. Also, the Mercury was conjunct Chiron in Aries. So this had a lot of layers to it. It's still moving through us. We're going to talk about that here. This whole week is really pulling us more and more through that Scorpio full moon in a lot of ways. And so the Scorpio full moon, all about things coming up, fears, feelings, things that need to come up to be released for good. Because we had, the stellium in Aries a couple weeks ago with the new moon open up new doors. And now it's almost like if you buy a new plot of land, and now you see it in the light of day and you see all the tree stumps and the weeds and the things that need to be removed. That's what this Scorpio full moon did. It's kind of like taking that open door, that open opportunity, and saying, wow, we got some work to do here, because there's some things we just haven't let go of in the past. So I don't know about you, but I've experienced some things I haven't grieved in the past that have come up that I've had to deal with. Also some anger, some fears. So all kinds of things happening in the last several days for me. Comment below if anything has happened for you. Okay, so very intense, and it's really about taking responsibility with that Saturn in Aries sextiling Venus in Gemini with this expansive opportunities we now have. We have now more options. That's that Venus and Gemini part of it, okay? And so the Scorpio full moon says, well, we've got to clear it out. If you really want to use this land, this plot of land, in the ways you want to, we've got to clear out those tree stumps and the weeds and everything else, okay? And that Mercury Chiron conjunction in Aries is really just that honesty about that. The honesty about, wow, I have held on to things way too long. There are things here that just aren't ready to go right now. So we got to get to work to really till that soil so that we can plant what we want to plant, build what we want to build, okay? And when we get to the new moon in Taurus on May 16th, 17th time frame, that is a time of great fertility, okay? So we'll talk about that in a couple weeks. But point is, we're in the clearing phase for that fertility period, okay? So we can plant those seeds, and those seeds are going to want to grow fast. And we'll get to that in the coming weeks, okay? But anyway, so things are coming up for release, okay? And yesterday, on Saturday, the moon was what we call void of course, when the moon makes its final aspect to a major planet before it exits a sign. So the moon was still in Scorpio, so we had the full moon in Scorpio Friday. It was still in Scorpio on Saturday, but early on Saturday morning, it actually formed a trine to Jupiter in Cancer, and that was its final aspect in Scorpio before it entered Sagittarius late last night. So pretty much all day Saturday on May 2nd, we had this void of course moon, and so it was taking all the feelings and things coming up with the Scorpio full moon, and with that Jupiter connection, it was stretching it. Okay, I picture like stretching nylon, opening up the pores, opening up the holes to allow more to filter out. Okay, so just really extending the energy of this full moon all the way through Saturday. And now, as we get from today, Sunday, through about Tuesday, we've got Mars, which is the traditional ruler of Scorpio. So again, this theme of that Scorpio full moon still moving through. And that's going to square Jupiter, that same Jupiter that the void of course moon linked up with in Cancer, okay? And so it'll be Mars in Aries, where it is home, its domicile, squaring Jupiter in Cancer, where it's exalted. So two planets in their power, squaring it off. And a square, they don't get along so well. Usually there's a winner and a loser when there's a square situation. And so this Mars in Aries, it can go two ways, impulsiveness or courage, okay? When we're acting on impulse, it can be very unconscious, and it can, or may not, lead to our demise, right? When we're acting with courage, that means we're fully integrated with the fears that come with the action, okay? So we're taking action despite the fears. That's the definition of courage. So that's the other side of Mars and Aries. And so that square to Jupiter is just making us make sure, if we're compelled to take action here at the beginning of the week, are we doing it fully integrated with this emotional knowledge that we now have, or are we doing it in a bypassing manner where we're just going at it and ignoring feelings, okay? Because if we don't have the feelings and the fears that come with that involved in our action, it isn't courageous, it's impulsive. Okay, so watch for that in the beginning of the week. Okay, also Monday into Tuesday, another extended void of course period. So some void of course periods can be like 3 minutes long. They don't have to be that long. This one's going to be the second half of Monday to the first half of Tuesday, and it's going to be the moon in Sagittarius now, making its final aspect. In this case, it'll be to Mars, again, the traditional ruler of Scorpio. So it's taking another step further. What's interesting is that when we get to Thursday, there'll be another void of course moon, because they happen every 2 or 3 days, every time the moon changes signs, okay? And the final aspect after the Capricorn moon is finished will be a square to Mars in Aries. So it's Mars coming up all week. So that traditional ruler of this Scorpio full moon is in the theme all week, whether it's that Mars square to Jupiter, again, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday time frame, the void of course moons, which is going to be the Sagittarius void of course Monday into Tuesday, and then the Capricorn void of course on Thursday. Okay, even as we get into next Saturday, Mother's Day weekend, even then we have when the moon will be exiting Aquarius, its final aspect will be to Mars, a sextile. So Mars is thematic all week with the void of course moons. Okay, and if Mars was at the final degree of the sign, it would make sense, but Mars is barely into the third decan of Aries at this point. So it's just interesting that that traditional ruler of this full moon in Scorpio we just had, it wants to stretch out. Okay, so any impulsiveness that we might feel, we've got to check in and make sure that we're fully integrated and that it's actually coming from courage, which acknowledges the fear, and not impulse, which tries to ignore it. That's the key to this week. That's the key to handling the unfolding of this Scorpio full moon energy, because things are coming up and we might want to react. We might want to instantly react and do things in ways that aren't going to be in our best interest. Okay, so this is reminding us to make sure that, yes, we might be inspired to act. Yes, we might realize we need to act on something and release something, but can we do it in an integrated fashion? That's really what we're being asked to do this whole week, okay? Also, the Mercury entered Taurus Saturday night, last night, and it is going to be forming a square to Pluto, and it's going to aspect the moon's nodes, just like this full moon in Scorpio did. And so it's kind of, again, reiterating the themes of the full moon in Scorpio, which is that intensity, which is that getting rid of what needs to be gotten rid of so we can aim our arrows toward the future based on our intuition, release the past in terms of control, and trust our way forward, okay? So our minds essentially are linking up with the themes of this full moon in Scorpio. So the full moon in Scorpio is the theme of this week coming up. Okay, it didn't just happen on Friday. It is unfolding all week. And we're being checked to make sure that we are feeling the feelings we need to feel, integrating them, and that our actions are based on integration, not on reaction to avoid the fears or avoid the feelings or avoid the integration. Okay? And then finally this week, we've got Pluto in Aquarius, which again was just aspected by the full moon, and it's going to be aspected by the Mercury here. It's turning retrograde. So we had all planets direct here from March 20th, the equinox, right up until this week. Pluto's going retrograde. Pluto goes retrograde about almost half the year every year. So to me, it's not the same as when personal planets go retrograde. Things are still in forward motion. This is a more societal, evolutionary aspect that's saying, hey, we've gone as far as we can with this whole transformation of the future situation. Now it's time to integrate on a collective and evolutionary level, okay? So it's a lot of integration happening this week on a personal level. It really is just up to us, again, to feel the feelings that are coming up. It's happening for me. Integrate them. Don't disown them. And whatever actions we take are based on that wholeness, and not as a way to go, oh, I need to avoid that, so here's what I'm going to do, right? That would be impulsive action. So maturity in terms of that Martian energy is what's being asked for. But it'll be pretty tempting here in the beginning of the week, especially with Jupiter squaring Mars. If you have any questions, let me know. Comment below any experiences you've been having. If you're looking for a personal reading, contact me as well. Other than that, enjoy your Sunday, enjoy your week, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.